Hello everybody. In this video we're going to be looking at how to find the circumcenter of a triangle if we are given the coordinates that go with that triangle. Now, before we get too far into this, let's talk about our process. If I want to find the circumcenter and I'm given a set of points, the first thing I need is the slope of each side. The second thing I need is the midpoint of each side. I need both of those in order to be able to write the equation of the perpendicular bisectors. And once I have my perpendicular bisectors, I then need to solve a system of equations, and I can choose which system I want to solve. So let's kind of go through this process together. We'll start off with our slopes. So the slope of AB, that's going to be 4 minus 2 divided by -3 minus 1, and that's going to give us positive 2 over -4, which is just -1/2. Okay, let's go ahead and find the slope of BC. So the slope of BC is going to be 4 minus 2 over -3 minus -1, which is just going to be plus 1. And that's going to give me 2 over -2, which will then be -1. And the slope of AC is going to equal -1 minus 1 is going to be in my denominator, and I'm going to have 2 minus 2 in my numerator, so 2 minus 2 over -1 minus 1, and that's going to give me 0 over -2, which is just 0. So, in this circumstance, since what we want to use this for is to write the perpendicular bisector equation, that means that I need to take the opposite reciprocal of each of these slopes. So opposite reciprocal of -1/2 is just going to be positive 2. The opposite reciprocal of -1 is going to be positive 1. And the opposite reciprocal of 0 basically tells me that this slope is undefined. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need. We need all those slopes. Now let's find the midpoints of our sides. So, midpoint of AB is going to be 1 plus -3, so the 2x coordinates from A and B, divided by 2, comma, and then 2 plus 4 divided by 2, and that's going to give us -2 over 2, which is -1, and 6 over 2, which is 3. The midpoint of BC is going to be -3 plus -1 divided by 2, comma, and 4 plus 2, or 2 plus 4, but let's try to keep in order. 4 plus 2 divided by 2. And this will give us, let's see, that would be that would be negative 2, comma 3. And then the midpoint of AC is going to be negative 1 plus 1 over 2, comma 2 plus 2 over 2, and that's going to equal 0, comma 2. Okay, so now we need our perpendicular bisectors. Now, you only really need 2 of them. I recommend writing all 3 just so that you can make an informed decision when we get to step 4. So we're going to write all 3 here, but really you could just write 2, solve whatever system you get, and go from there. So for AB, and actually before we get into that part too much, let's kind of highlight the information that's going to go together. So that slope of a perpendicular line to AB is going to go with the midpoint of AB. The slope of the line perpendicular to BC is going to go with the midpoint for BC. And the undefined slope is going to go with our midpoint of AC. Okay, so now that we have that, let's get them written. So for AB's perpendicular bisector, what I know right now is I have y equals 2x, but I don't know what the value of b is. So I'm going to use this point and the fact that we have a x and a y there, and I'm going to solve for what we have. So this is going to be 3 equals 2 times negative 1 plus b. So this would be 3 equals negative 2 plus b. And if we add 2 to both sides, we end up with b equals 5. And all of that information put together is going to give us y equals 2x plus 5 as one of our perpendicular bisectors. Okay, now let's do BC. Again, we have that our y equals, just in this case it is 1x, so just x plus some b. Again, I'm going to use the fact that I have an x and a y from my midpoint. So 3 equals negative 2 plus b. And then when we solve for b, that's going to give us 5 equals b. And this produces the line y equals x plus 5. And then we're going to do AC. So with AC's perpendicular bisector, I have an undefined slope, and I have the point 0, 2. Well, anytime we have an undefined slope, we know that the equation is just going to be x equals whatever my x-coordinate is. So that means x equals 0. Okay. So now we get to make a choice. I want to solve a system of equations. Now, I can solve one of three systems. We can either put these two together, so y equals 2x plus 5 and y equals x plus 5. Or we could put y equals 2x plus 5 and x equals 0 together. Or we could put y equals x plus 5 and x equals 0 together. Now, honestly, if you already know that x equals 0, or you knew that y equals something, like y equals 3, you should use that as one of your two. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to choose these two. For the purposes of this video, I'm using that one and that one, just so that we can see fully solving a system. So we have y equals 2x plus 5, and I have y equals x plus 5. Now, we're going to solve this using substitution. You could use elimination if you wanted. You could graph them if you want. You could use other methods in algebra if you want. But for right now, we're just going to use substitution. So I have y in y, and I know that they equal those. So I'm going to set those two things equal to each other. So 2x plus 5 equals x plus 5. And to solve the system, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides of my equation, and we're going to subtract x from both sides of my equation, and that's going to give us x equals 5 minus 5 is 0, which we already knew we would get. Cool, we have x equals 0. Now to figure out what our y is, we're going to substitute this back into either of these equations. It doesn't matter which one. So I'm going to do 2 times 0 plus 5, and that tells me that y equals 5. So this tells me that my circumcenter is the point 0, 5. Okay, so we have, just to summarize real quick, we have to first find the slopes of each side of the triangle and the slope of a line perpendicular to it. Then we find the midpoint of each side of our triangle. And after we find that, we then do our perpendicular bisectors, writing the equation for each perpendicular bisector. Once we have our 3 perpendicular bisectors, we choose 2 of them to use as a system of equations and solve. Once we solve that system of equations, that gives us our circumcenter. I am hopeful that this video will be helpful for you. And other than that, take care, and I will see you next time.